So welcome back to whatever the hell I'm calling this, or a look at a few of my favourite Commander EDH decks. So this week we are taking a look at Heliod the Radiant Dawn, aka Heliod the World Eclipse, aka Grease-Bearing Gifts. He'll give you a moment. Actually, everything's in a slightly different order this time, so it looks like we're starting with the mana base this time for a change. We have... Give me a second to grab the whole mana base. There we go. We have Island, 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 and Plains, 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 Plains. So, leading more towards blue than white. Not entirely unexpected for a deck like this. We then have Reach Sanitarium, which can force everyone to draw a card, ditch a card. Mycosynth Gardens, basically in there so it can copy certain artifacts in the deck. We'll get them when we get there. Elving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, you know what they do already. Reliquary Tower is one of a few hand-sized cards in here. Megakara, force everyone to draw. And then for our jewels, we have Port Town, Flood Strand, Azorius Chancery, Command Tower. Mystic Sanctuary is a very fun one. I'll set one aside just to remind myself later. There's something I did in a recent game that's extremely rude but very funny. Temple of Enlightenment, Deserted Beach, Mystic Gate, Sea of Clouds, Prairie Stream, Adarka Wastes, Hengegate Pathway / Mistgate Pathway, Meticulous Archive, Skycloud Expanse, Seachrome Coast, Glacial Fortress, and Hallowed Fountain. So, fairly standard mana base, but a couple of cards that forces everyone to draw, which you'd think there are better ways of getting draw power on this deck, and oh boy, you're right. So, we're now on to the ramp. The Canter of Endless Water, another hand-sized one. Arcane Signet, Talisman of Progress, rather nice Doctor Who version. Felwar Stone, and Azorius Signet and Commander Sphere. Now, note that none of these can produce colorless mana. If you already know what Heliod does, you'll know why. We're now on to hand-sized stuff again. So we have Wizard Class, and an old card, friend of the channel Toru tasked me with tracking down. I managed to find two of them, because I liked it and realised that, hey, that'd be really fun in this deck. Basically, skip the discard phase means find the maximum hand size, and I believe the Oracle text now reflects that. If something forces you to discard, you instead discard to the top of your library rather than the graveyard. And if discard is random, you can look at the card before choosing where it goes. Now, on top of that, this means that, say someone wheels you, you can choose to return 4 of your cards to the top of the... This is on a card-by-card basis, so say you get hit with Wheel of Fortune or whatever. You ditch your hand, you draw 7. Except you don't ditch your hand, you ditch the 3 cards that you don't need right now, and then put the other 4 back on top of your deck. You draw those 4 and 3 more. Very fun card. One of those is fun, obscure old ones that no one plays, but that's really good. Black Vice. Very rude one in this deck, potentially. We'll get there when we get there. Because now, let's talk about what the commander does. So, on the first side, nothing really spectacular. It just returns an enchantment from graveyard to hand. So it's decent enchantments commander. But then you flip it, and suddenly all your spells have flash, and they cost 1 less for each card your opponents have drawn this turn. And the eagle-eyed among you may recognise the next card. So basically, once your commander is online, you're no longer playing on your turn, and you want your opponents to draw cards so that your stuff costs less. Which is why Force Fruition's in the deck. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, they draw 7. Which means suddenly all your stuff costs 7 colorless less. Very fun. So, that right there is the core of the deck. Wedding Ring is basically a means of getting some draw power for yourself from that. There's also another interaction in here that I haven't gotten to use yet, but I'll get to when I get to. Psychosis Crawler is another one where it can potentially get really big, and if you're drawing a lot of cards, which you're hopefully going to be doing, it gets real dangerous. Now we get on to the really fun shit. And these next 5 cards are all here to copy Force Tuition or Black Vice. So that basically you can burn your opponent for hand size multiple times, or burn multiple opponents for hand size, or force them to draw an increasing number of cards. Because Mirror Maid can copy instant copy of target's artifact or enchantment. Astral Dragon creates 2 copies of it. Card Adventuress creates potentially 1 copy per turn. Clever Impersonator gives you another copy. And Copy Enchantment gives you another copy. Very rude when you can get it off. So, I think the most I've done is, if anyone draws a card, basically if anyone casts a spell, they draw 28. Decks tend not to last very long against this. It's very funny when it gets going. It's because no one expects it. Like, Force Tuition first comes out and people are like, great, I can draw some cards. And then suddenly we have no deck left. It's magnificent. So, Windblazed Cleric, your basic tutor for usually Force Tuition. Idyllic Tutor, which is currently a totally legit proxy. I have this version coming from the Fallout Secret Lair. I'm running this until then. Windfall, extremely fun one when everyone ends up with a massive hand. You give someone a big hand, you Windfall with Psychosis Crawler on the board, and you can basically kill someone right away. Vision Schemes force everyone to draw 2. Nice and cheap. It means that you also cost potentially 6 less, which isn't bad for 2 mana. Sorry, both cats are now here and interfering. Strongest Project Purity, relatively recent edition. You're going to want to cast this in Brotherhood mode. At the beginning of your upkeep, each opponent draws a card, and then you draw a card for each person to draw a card this way. So basically, it gets you some solid card draw and gives you cost reduction on your own turn, which you don't normally get. Jace's Archivist is Windfall and a creature. The temple is under attack. We're getting into the interaction now, I think. This basically, you and target opponent each draw 2. Tales of the Ancestors. Everyone draws up to highest. Another very fun one. Fascination. Each player draws X cards. Now, bearing in mind that if I force Tuition out and 2 people will cast spells this turn, that's already 14 less. So that can already be X equals 14. Just to really hammer someone. Folio Fancies. No one has a maximum hand size, which everyone's really grateful for until they get hit with Black Vice with 30 cards in hand. Minds Aglow. Another one that goes really well with Black Vice, where everyone's like, oh great, I can get a bunch of cards. Everyone pays mana towards it. You slap someone on Black Vice. They lose 20 odd life on their turn. Fairy Mastermind, recent addition to the deck, just replaced Ledger Shredder. Same thing but better, effectively. Prosperity. Prosperity is another one, which is just an X cost, so it goes really well with Force Tuition, and just cost reduction in general. Alchemist of Rogma. Whenever your opponent searches the library, game on life, draw a card. Nice fun card draw one. Alhammerit's Archive. You gotta be fucking careful with this, because if you Windfall with this out, you're probably gonna deck out. Just because, someone probably has 20 odd cards in hand, that means you're drawing 40 odd cards. The life gain stuff's handy, but doesn't come up as much. There's one life gain card in here. Now, Teferi, I initially ran because of the card draw, and because it can get big quite quickly. I didn't bother to look at his other abilities, which means that it wasn't until one of my opponents, I believe, friend of the challenge Josh, was shit scared of it, but I realised, hang on a minute, this is also a board wipe for target player when it gets big, and it can get big real quick in this deck. Ulamog. Literally just in here for that bottom paragraph. When it puts into a graveyard from anywhere, it's shuffled into the graveyard shuffles into the library. It's a recycler, basically. It lets me recycle my yard into my deck so that I can keep going while everyone has minimal deck left. Clear the Mind. Oh yeah, also, notice how it only costs colorless. I have cast this for free once or twice. Just cheeky Eldrazi for 0 mana. Clear the Mind, again. Shuffle your graveyard to your library, draw a card. Words of Worship. This is another deck out intervention one, where you can just funnel whatever mana you have open into not decking out and gaining 5 life instead of drawing. It's not quite as good as Pursuit of Knowledge, where you just skip drawing a card and just keep skipping drawing cards with just bank study counters on this. Very useful. Arcane Denial. We're now into the interaction suite. It's a standard counter spell that also makes your stuff cheaper, effectively. Very fun. Plexing Test, bounces shit to hand. Reliable to have. Swords to Plowshares, my staple propaganda. Attacking creatures had to pay 2 mana. Dissipation Field's a very rude one that friend of the channel Maya runs in her fairy deck. Not fairy, little fairy. That it's based around Jace locking. I forget what the fairy is that does that. More recently, she's been running it with the new Fiddle Flippers commander, which makes it less powerful and very fun to play against, I will admit. Although she does have terrible luck with getting left with drawing lands. Nice full-out camp spell. Heliod's Intervention, nice recent and thematically appropriate addition. Basically, gain twice X life, unless you have Alhamra's Archive, in which case you gain 4 times X life. And bearing in mind, if you have Force Fruition out, X is going to be a big number. Or basically, Artifact Enchantment board wipe. Farewell, deal with big threats. Kind of a last resort, because it's also can exile your win cons. Grasp of Fate, usual steel stuff. Fractured Identity is the reason why I left Wedding Ring out. Because these two have a really janky combo that I've yet to pull off, but I really want to. So, Force Fruition on the board. I've got Wedding Ring with someone. I Fractured Identity my own Wedding Ring. So now, whenever anyone draws... whenever anyone casts a spell during their turn, everyone else draws cards. And just forces everyone to deck out that a little bit quicker. So, break the spell. Fairly standard enchantment removal. It can also be a precursor to that Farewell earlier, where I can potentially blow up Force Fruition with this. So that I can then fetch it back from the graveyard whenever I recast my commander that can fetch enchantments from bin. Path to Exile. Blow up target creature. Stroke of Midnight. Blow up non-land permanent. Supreme Verdict. It's just a board wipe. You're going to need those. This isn't a very combat-heavy deck, as you probably noticed. Villain's Lair is usually going to be used to counter-target spell. Draw 2, ditch 2 is occasionally handy. Gale's Redirection is one of the best counter spells in the game. It lets you steal the spell you're countering. Everybody Lives. Solid combat trick. It's a not die button, basically. Nice full-out generous gift. And now we're on to the token generation. We have here Council of 4. Whenever a player draws a second card during their turn, you draw a card, already useful for card draw. When they cast their second spell, you get a creature token, which, oh boy, you're going to need. Because this deck, you probably noticed, a little short on creatures. Top to Spy Network. It gives you some 1/1s. You're going to have an artifact, almost certainly. Ominous Seas, whenever you draw a card, you put a Foreshadow counter, you rebate, you get a Kraken. Again, you're going to be drawing a lot of cards with this deck, you may as well get some Krakens out of it. On now to the miscellaneous fun stuff. Greater Oromancy is a root one in this deck with various enchantment copiers, as it means that I can just get shit built, drop one of these, and then drop copy enchantment as a second Greater Oromancy, meaning that my Greater Oromancies also have Shroud. Omniscience, I've only managed to cast this once, but it's very funny when it works. You know, what it basically means is suddenly all your stuff is completely free. You're already probably not worrying about colorless mana. Suddenly color pips don't matter either. And you probably have a big hand by the time you get to this. Tasha's Hideous Laughter. Nice rude one. Can potentially exile stuff that other people are using to recycle their decks. Fractured Sanity. Another potentially rude one. This is the one that I set aside Mystic Sanctuary for, because there was a game recently where I realised I had access to exactly 7 blue mana. And both of the... Well, they say I had access to 6 blue mana, and both of these cards in hand, and I hadn't played a land for turn yet. So I Fractured Sanity. Everyone mills 14. Land for turn is Mystic Sanctuary, which enters and taps the Hound of Islands. Fractured Sanity is returned to hand, and then you use the 2 blue mana I have access to and the Sanctuary to Fractured Sanity again and mill everyone another 14. Extremely rude, very funny when it works. Finally, Ivory Tower. Cheeky bit of life gain. You're going to have a big hand, you may as well get as much value from it as possible. Quick look at the tokens here then. We have a few Knights. We have a couple of copies, Kraken, and whatever thoughts I happen to have on hand. I've been meaning to get more copy tokens just because, like, Court of Adventurers can start going nuts with copy effects. Potentially, because people aren't going to be swinging at you. Anyway, this has been Greeks Bearing Gifts, because everyone thinks card draw is great until their entire deck is in their hand and they still need to draw 7. Very funny deck to play. A lot of people don't know how to deal with it first, so it's my absolute favourite one to try it against newer, basically players that I haven't faced yet. Cannot recommend this deck enough. Extremely fun, 10 out of 10. No current upgrades planned for it. I reckon I've got it about where I want it for the moment, unless something new and interesting comes out that benefits the strategy. So, like, more enchantment copying in blue, cheaper tutors or something, or, like, tutors that do other things. Anyway, I will see you all next time. Let's do Pirates next, that one's fun.